Hello friends, welcome back to Toy Cafe. I'm your host, and in this video we're going to put together this set of cabinets that I made from scratch. I intended them to look like a set of cabinets you can get from IKEA. And so let's get into it and I'll tell you what I did. So to start it with, I made up my own material. What this is a layer of cardstock, a layer of veneer, and another layer of cardstock. And that's to represent the outer finishes, and the veneer is for stiffness, so it doesn't bend around too much on me. And you can also see that I printed out some very light lines on my paper so that I have a guide for cutting, just to make life a little bit easier. When I'm done cutting them, most of that should be gone, and because it's so light, it should be near invisible as well. And of course there's a lot of cutting. Just like in a real cabinet, each cabinet has a minimum of 5 pieces, and then you add a door, that's 6, add a shelf, that's 7, and so on and so on and so on. Lots and lots of cutting. Now when IKEA makes their cabinets, they make it out of something called particle board that's covered with melamine. It's perfectly safe as long as you don't eat it. But they have to cover their edges of their cabinets because you can see the inside, and that doesn't look very nice. So they cover it up with PVC edge tape. So I'm doing the same thing, except my edge tape is more cardstock. And I just cut a strip to size, fairly thin. It's only about a 1/16 of an inch wide. And I hit it pretty good, but the tape, the edging is a little bit wider than the actual panel, so make sure I get good coverage. Still looks pretty good though. So we'll start assembling some of these cabinets, and I'm just being very careful to keep everything lined up. In real cabinets, the IKEA ones especially, usually there's some hardware that you use for holding everything together, some little metal dowels and things, but in this case they would have been as small as a hair is across, super skinny, so not really something I could have implemented, but a little bit of glue works just as well, if not better. And there we go, there's the cabinet, and it all fit together pretty well. You can see where I'm having a little bit of trouble keeping the line straight when I cut the material, and that's because the wood inside the veneer, I'm just using a ruler to make sure everything's even and square. Yeah, the veneer underneath the paper has grain, and whenever you cut grain materials with a knife, the knife tends to want to follow the grain. And so when you're cutting, you can lean in against your straight edge a little bit and get things a little bit straighter, but it still can cause all kinds of very minor problems. And because we're working with miniatures, minor problems become not so minor problems. But I think it still looks pretty good. We'll get the other pieces in there as well. And those are the smaller cabinets that are going to accompany the 2 big ones. Yeah. I can put up here the cabinets that inspired me for this from IKEA. But I kind of went off on my own, so they don't look 100% like them anymore. So here I'm using some plexiglass, 1/16 inch plexiglass. And it comes with a paper on one side, it comes with plastic on the other, but the paper is really held down well. And I'm using this to make a mask because I'm going to paint these doors, but I want the center to still be see-through. So I scored the paper very lightly and using a knife to get it started because it is on there very well. I'm going to peel it off and leave the piece in the center, and then I'll have a nice mask. So when I paint them, parts I want painted will be painted, and the parts I want clear will stay clear. It's pretty neat. It's a handy little thing that just works out nice with this particular material. Yeah, just acrylic plexiglass. Looks pretty good. But you do have to sand it first in order for the paint to adhere. If you don't sand the plexiglass, the paint will just slide right off. It's too slippery, too shiny. Yeah, so I just gave it a buffing with 320 grit sandpaper, and you can see the paint goes right on, no problem. There are a few other things, though, you have to be careful with. I'm using acrylic paint, and what will happen is when you put the second layer on top, you can see right there, it'll start wetting the first layer of paint, and it'll soften it, and if you keep working it, it'll actually start scraping off the old layer of paint. So you want to paint it quick, then do a sand, and paint it again quick so you don't rub off any of your old layers. And once all that is done, I'm now taking off the rest of the paper. It kind of got painted on pretty good there. with all the layers of paint I put on, but not too bad. And we'll just peel it back and look at that nice straight line. This works even better than using tape or masking tape or painter's tape or anything like that, because it's adhered to the glass so nicely. There we go. Nice modern glass door. And I did this for the drawer fronts as well, but I painted the entire thing and then used the paper side as the front side. And that way they have that ultra glossy look like you can get with IKEA cabinets. And a big old glob of glue, and we'll glue some of these lower cabinets together. I'm gluing the whole set together before I install them, just so they go in as one unit. And that way it's a little bit easier to handle. And then I can also make sure that everything's straight, square, and nice and tight. All the joints in between are tight. So now I'm going to put my shiny drawer fronts on, and the most important thing here is just not to put them on upside down, because the glue I'm using, as soon as it touches the plastic, it actually begins to eat it away. So got to be careful with that. Now I'm just putting these on a little willy-nilly, except for the spaces in between. I'm using a piece of regular printer paper as a gap guide, and then I'm going to use a ruler to straighten everything up so it's nice and straight and even. And I want the line down the middle of the cabinets to be the straight line. Unfortunately, these aren't all perfectly the same size, so they end up a little bit crooked on the bottom, but not so much that it bothers your eye. Just enough that if you made it or someone points it out, you can see it, which is always the way. So I'm using more paper to guide the gap in between the upper and lower drawers. And then I'm going to use more paper in between those to make sure that everything has the same gap. When you order IKEA cabinets, they actually offer drawer fronts in 3 different sizes, and they are very similar to this. You have a small one and a big one, or you could have just one giant one, or so on. It's all modular, so you can mix and match pretty well. It's pretty neat. So these are the shelves for inside the tall cabinets. And I'm using a pair of spacers to put these in, and I knew that there really was only 2 ways I could go with this to look nice. One was to have them perfectly centered, and all of them centered, and I thought that would look nice but a little bit boring. Or if I do them offset, I have to do it staggered, so one up, one down, and the other one down and one up. And that way they have a very nice appearance. Look like they're out of a showroom catalog, with everything perfectly spaced and laid out. At least I think so. And now we're going to need to decorate the shelves, put the items on it, because once I put the doors on there, I'm not using hinges. I'm not going to be able to open up the doors again, so everything has to be in there beforehand, including these troublesome books. Yeah, I roughed up these books a little bit. I wanted them to look like they're all really old, out of print kind of books. Something someone would collect instead of being their main reading source, because this is meant to go in my ultra-modern converted loft space apartment set. And because of that, I imagine the people that would live there wouldn't use books too often. They would appreciate books, and they would really enjoy some of these old vintage ones, but they wouldn't be their main source of reading. They'd read off of a screen. Yeah. We got some little figures here. These are actually, I think they look like those Funko Pop figures. That's what I was going for. But they're actually a discontinued toy line called Mixels. You know, they came in little blind bags and everything, and I picked some up at the dollar store after they were out of print, so to speak. Yeah, but I thought they looked perfect for miniature Funko Pop figures. And those are very popular among millennials to collect and decorate with. You get a nice picture in here, a little flower. I rearranged things a little bit there, and that's always dangerous to do when you're working with Beacon Hill 3-in-1 glue, because the glue tends to leave behind a residue that's visible unless your material is white. So it worked out pretty well here. Yeah, the glue itself, the residue it leaves behind is white. So unless you notice the disturbance on the surface, you probably won't see it. So that was good for me. And of course we need a few bizarre odds and ends. And so why not a giant light bulb and a giant cupcake? Yeah. Now we're going to attach the main doors, and I'm doing it just like the drawer fronts. Just going to glue around the edge of the cabinet, put the doors on, And there we go. The border here, the white border on the doors, is inspired by IKEA again. This is how their glass doors come, black and white, and I think a wood color? I'm not sure. But they do that because where the glass attaches to their frame, if they put a little bit of color around the edge, they don't have to have a perfect join there, and they can hide some of their sins. And for me too, it hides some of my sins as well. So unfortunately, I do have to modify my room slightly, just like a real room. I have to take off the chair rail, but I avoided doing anything to the baseboard, and this is a trick that people actually do. When you buy IKEA cabinets, they normally set on the floor, they set on a pair of legs, but if you get a custom toe kick made, you can put the cabinets on top of that, and you don't have to cut your baseboard, you don't have to cut your cabinets, you just install everything nice and neat. It's a few inches higher than it was, but you don't have to wreck anything to get it in there. Unless you have something like baseboard heating, then you got to do other things because, well, you don't want it getting hot under there. But if it's just plain baseboard, it works out really well. That's a nice trick that you can use in real life. We've done it before. And one last touch to finish the thing off, of course, a nice glass top in white. Glass and white. You can buy these from IKEA too. In many sizes. They fit many of their different cabinets. And I think they look really sharp. So here we go. Ultra glossy glass, and yeah, I think it fits into my ultra modern apartment very well. We got a little Dassahound inspecting the work. Yeah. The things on the glass countertop there are just temporary, but the things inside the cabinet are going to have to stay there. Good boy. And there we go. That's my IKEA cabinets to match my ultra-modern converted loft space apartment. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon. And if you really like this video and my other videos, please consider hitting one of the links down in the description. It'll take you to Amazon, and if you buy anything while you're there after hitting those links, Amazon will kick back some money to me, and I will use that money to make more videos for you. But in the meantime, I want to say thank you for watching. Bye-bye.